Hi, welcome back to Weatherford Daze. I'm Rachel, this is Jason. And if you are just now joining us for the first time, welcome. We are in the middle of a series on the great, or maybe not so great.
I think he
We're
is.
still deciding, H.G. Wells. And today we're going to talk about the Invisible Man. So, yeah. Exciting. Super exciting.
We always say exciting. I'm sure we ought to have like a thesaurus nearby and like have a bunch of words to.
We just need an exciting count for
instead of excitement we're excited. We've already used enthused. We've said enthused before, but we'll have to try some other stuff.
So we're going to give a brief summary of the plot and. Brief, right? This time, we're notorious for not being brief. But, The Invisible Man. Again, this was another one that I had not read in full. I had read the abridged, children's version of it.
Sanitized, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, just like last week's The War of the Worlds, it was interesting to get the full story and not just kind of get my impressions of what the Invisible Man was from things like The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which was probably what my original thought, when you hear the Invisible Man, that's what I thought of. And I wonder how many people are also coming at it like that, of just not having really realized what the Invisible Man was about.
I did see I did look at the abridged book too. I know which one you're talking about. And I saw the 1930s movie, but before I saw it, it was in a book that had pictures from the movie. Mm-hmm. And it was there were these books that had the universal monsters and stories and all kinds of stuff in it. And that was one of them. And I later saw the movie before I saw League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which the comic book is based on, has the character from this book. Mm-hmm. But in the movie, it's a thief who stole the formula from him, which, when you talk about the plot, it does make sense about the formula outliving the man, which we'll talk about.
It does, though it would be rather difficult to do. But let's get into that. So the story is about an interesting character who comes to a little village in England.
Iping.
Yes. And he's rather unpleasant. He startles people. For one thing, he's just completely covered in bandages. He kind of keeps out of the way. But not only is his appearance unpleasant, his attitude is unpleasant as well. He's just not a very nice person, very impatient, just not a pleasant dude. And very quickly, he wears out his welcome, gets asked, and there, at the same time, shortly after he comes to town, there's a theft that happens, and people putting two and two together come to the conclusion that it must have been him that was the thief. So they try to arrest him, but in the process of his arrest, he reveals that he is actually invisible. He takes off his clothes, and underneath there's just nothing. And it manages to get away in the shock, and just obviously nobody can see him. They don't react very quickly to that. And then you kind of follow the rest of the story, his escapades, and in the end, you see him stopped and taken down. You also see kind of his descent into, just from being an unpleasant person to actually kind of going mad at everything. He decides that he wants to take over the world and rule, and then, is finally, in the end, killed. And so this is the story of how that happens. It's a short story overall, and yet obviously, like most of H.G. Wells' stories, this one was impactful for its time. But yeah, we're gonna.
He is no hero.
Obviously not.
A lot
He's
of times,
villain.
a lot of times when we are, I think nowadays when we pick up a book or in a comic book and it says something man, we're like, oh, hero.
You
But
think
this
of
guy's
somebody
not.
with superpowers as being a superhero, but yeah.
What it is I was thinking about, speaking of superheroes, there's a line from the first Captain America movie where he's not Captain America yet. He's a skinny guy. He wants to fight in the war, because he doesn't like bullies. He doesn't like. And so what he decides to do is he talks to this professor, and the professor says, I have this formula. And he says, it takes what you are and makes it better. If you're a good man, you'll be strong, you'll do good things with your strength. But if you have evil in you, you add the powers to that, and your decisions are going to go bad. And there's actually a character who has done that. So I was thinking, I don't think that he was going down a good path even before the invisibility formula.
That happens in the Hulk too, where you see kind of a good Hulk, then you see somebody that's evil that gets the same formula.
Oh,
that
the Abomination
also,
guy, yeah.
Yeah, turns evil. So I feel like a lot of superhero type things have kind of explored that mentality. I think this one just kind of has maybe the position of being the first, or maybe the first that became well known.
Right.
And it made people talk.
There was other stories about. I would say, yeah, you're right. There are other stories about characters that get abilities far above other people, but they end up choosing, or they end up revealing more of who they are through it. You can tell who's gonna be evil and who's gonna be good by that. The character is known as Griffin, and even it mentions that he is an albino. So there's already, I think, a difference with him. There's a difference. So he's a little bit. People aren't like they are nowadays. Well, people are very mean, but I was thinking there's a distance between him and other people already, even before the formula.
You have to think that somebody that has that big of a difference, that he probably his entire life startled people with his appearance. So the idea for him to want to become invisible, to just not have to have that reaction of what people think of the way that he looks, like, it makes sense for an albino. I wish that there had been some actual mention by him of that being a motivation, because it's
I don't think he would ever admit that, because he's telling it to a character named Kemp.
But the thing is,
and he's revealing.
While he's explaining everything, he very much is trying to justify himself and his decisions, and why he needs his help. He's trying to get Kemp on his side, because he realizes at that point he needs an accomplice. He needs somebody else.
He did show earlier that he needed somebody. There's a guy named Thomas Marvel. He says he needs him, and I think that he's not I won't say Thomas Marvel's a bad person. He's just a normal guy. I think he starts getting nervous by not the evil, but the attitude that he sees from Griffin. He starts kind of going, I've got to reveal to somebody else that this guy's the Invisible Man. He starts, there's that part where he's trying to give away to that person at the shop that he's the Invisible Man is there, and as soon as he thinks and he starts feeling a poke on him, he's like, oh, I gotta go now. Do you remember that part?
Talking about like the hobo guy?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought that was who you were talking about.
He's the guy that owns the inn later that calls the Invisible Man in.
He's the one that takes his books and
so he needs
But
people.
the thing is he wasn't just kind of a regular guy. So that's why I was kind of confused a little bit, because you're like, he's a regular guy.
No, in terms of his intelligence,
Griffin,
he's average intelligence.
He seemed to be kind of below average. He seemed to be kind of, this is a guy that seemed to be kind of homeless, living off of other people's charity, and maybe not the smartest.
Okay.
He was a beggar. And so, the fact that Griffin is going, oh, this is somebody that can be easily used by me and easily bullied into doing what I tell him to do just because I can intimidate him.
Well, why did he go to Kemp? Because Kemp is brilliant, isn't he? Or smarter?
Yeah.
Pretty smart?
So he kind of he did both extremes.
Ah.
He went, so this guy is too dumb for me to be able to actually control, and he's betrayed me, and so, I actually need to get somebody smart on my side that can back me up. So he went to both extremes. Yeah, right.
Something to manipulate.
This literally was, you see this guy who got some intelligence. He obviously was smart because he was able to come up with the theory and test it and be able to invent this formula. But he was selfish, and from the very get-go, that this wasn't somebody that was in any way admirable. And I think that, I think the albinism kind of seemed to contribute to him feeling separate and other from everybody. He didn't feel like he fit in. And there is always that temptation when you don't feel like you fit, and you also feel like you're smarter than everybody else, that you can go to, well, everybody else is beneath me, and they don't have value other than how they can serve me. And that's where Griffin went. And I think that, at first I kind of went, I feel like how quickly things progress in just, it didn't seem really realistic for how quickly he went from, kind of normal to just...
Or petty theft and things like that too.
He went insane at the end, there just was a level of out of his mind that he had been driven to. But I don't think that he was actually sane at the beginning of the experiment. So, thinking about it, it was like, this wasn't quick. This was years that he had spent to develop this formula, and an entire lifetime. You can see just by, it talks about how he approached the death of his father.
Yeah.
Which his father died because he shot himself, because Griffin had stolen from him, right? Money that his father had owed to someone else.
Selfishness. Yeah, I don't care that my dad owes this money. Yeah.
And Griffin was like, I stole money that he owed to someone else, and he shot himself. And I didn't even really want to go to his funeral. And, meh. It was just complete and utter indifference to the fact that he had been the cause of his father's death.
Yeah.
And his despair. And it's like, it just didn't even compute. There was no processing of that. There was no guilt for any of the actions that he took had done.
So is there another way to look at because we can look at it as a character and a developed character in a story. But if H.G. Wells is possibly trying to show what someone with that kind of level of greed and ambition, a man of sin, who now he even says with impunity, he even says, the Invisible Man says that he can go about with impunity, not caring about the consequences. So you have someone who cannot be seen. So if your only accountability is to other human beings and not to God, and you declare yourself a God, he even says, Invisible Man the First, the reign of Invisible Man the First, almost like an emperor, a dictator. And it's kind of strange because he would have to make other invisible. He even says, I might have to make you invisible too, Kemp, so you can do this and can switch out or something like that. he doesn't think he can only just do this by himself, but he wants to.
I thought he wanted somebody that was visible to carry his stuff.
I think that he was going back and forth. That's where he ended up. Yeah. But there is a connection, and I didn't realize this until I looked into it. There's a connection between this book and Lord of the Rings, because I'll tell you why. Because the ring that confers invisibility comes from a book. It's a larger book. It's Plato's, the Greek philosopher Plato. He wrote the Republic, which was about morality, and looked at it from a secular point of view, like what is good, what is evil, what does man do, all these kind of things. And of course, in Christ, we have answers for a lot of these things, but he was trying to struggle with it. There's a myth in there called the Ring of Gyges, and there's a shepherd, a normal workaday guy, and he gets a ring that makes him invisible. And the things he chooses to do are what his heart desires, and those fleshly, carnal things, evil things, to sin. Now that no one can, So the question that Plato was struggling with was, if a man cannot be held accountable, cannot see, and he can do things with impunity, would he not choose to do those more baser things? And in Christianity, we believe that the heart of man, in I think it's Jeremiah, it says the heart is deceitful above all things. Is there a cure for it? And of course, the answer is a rhetorical question. The answer is, of course, it would be Christ eventually. But when mankind is in darkness and light is not exposed to them, they're going to seek after those sinful things. So it's kind of an update of the Ring of Gyges to me. And
to me, though, those stories are told better.
Well, okay.
I just, the idea of, because you have here a contrast between, multiple different people in Lord of the Rings who get this ring and what they choose to do with it. You see the differences in that the character makes upon
and
it.
And it's a corrupting influence, whereas this invisibility serum isn't corrupting in and of itself.
What Frodo chose to do over his 50 years of having the ring was far different than what Gollum chose to do.
Yes.
Gollum, from the very beginning, the first thing when he gets this ring that he chooses to do is to thieve, is to play tricks, until he gets driven out of his town.
Right.
Bilbo, what he chooses to do is occasionally, he would disappear when he saw the busybody coming his way. He'd just choose to avoid conflict.
Escape hatch, yeah.
Yeah. He's not choosing, to actually create mischief.
Yeah, he's only called a burglar later by Gandalf as a joke, kind of.
Yeah, but in The Hobbit, what he does with it when he first gets the ring, is he seeks to create peace. He used it to correct a situation. That where he took, what was it that he took and he gave to someone else in the movie?
I cannot remember.
That's going to drive me crazy.
Was it he tricked the goblins into fighting themselves?
Oh, the Arkenstone.
Yeah.
The Arkenstone, duh. He takes the Arkenstone from Thorin, or he gets the Arkenstone, doesn't tell Thorin that he has it.
Right.
But then when he sees that Thorin is too proud to actually negotiate with the elves and the men that have come to help them, he goes and he gives the Arkenstone to them as a bargaining tool, because he knows that Thorin will do anything to have that stone.
Right.
So he gives away, and that was a gamble. He knew that Thorin would not forgive him for that.
Right.
Would just be furious. And, it felt like it was a betrayal, but it was the right thing to do. So, you see the uses that he put to it were for good, out of a moral conscience. But anyway, I guess the thing is with this story, you know, as I'm looking at it, for what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, you know, overall I'm going, okay, this is interesting. I feel like I would have liked it developed more.
Yeah.
It just kind of went too quickly. When you have a villain, and you know that it's a cautionary tale, right? That's what H.G. Wells was known for writing these stories that show these glimpses of this is what could happen. You know, make sure that you're prepared or that you react well, or he's showing
or this is what men
are capable
are
of,
what we are, at our core.
So
without accountability
But the thing is if you're going to write a villain and show people that, as a warning, you need to have someone who's relatable.
Yeah.
And to me, Griffin was not a relatable character.
No.
In any way. He's somebody that I just went, oh, he's bad, and he was bad from the beginning, and there's no way that I could ever be him.
Well, that's good. And I think that hopefully...
But I would think that most everybody else could. If you contrast that, with other kind of villain stories, most of the villain stories that I know of, you understand and kind of sympathize with where the person, how they got there.
Oh, he doesn't want us to sympathize with him at all. And I think not wanting to be...
How is it a cautionary tale?
Well, not wanting to be
You're
him.
missing out on what actually creates a cautionary tale, because a cautionary tale should go, there, but for the grace of God, go I.
Right.
There's actually a potential that if I'm not careful, I could do that.
Do you think...
and I don't think that he wrote a relatable enough character for it to actually be a good cautionary tale.
What about Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? This is another character that starts off with good intentions, and you get a little bit more of their motivation, and you see their breakdown, and you see the evil that comes from their decision.
Right. But if you know that it started out with good intentions, we don't even get that in Invisible Man.
No.
There was no good intentions at the start.
Right.
There was nothing good that he was trying to develop this formula for. He did it because he realized that he could do it, and his intentions from the very beginning were what he could get out of it. And then it only really upset him because he realized that what he had intended it for, it wasn't actually working out. He was cold because in order to be invisible, he had to be naked.
Right.
He couldn't carry things that he wanted to steal.
Lots of vulnerability
because people could see the things. Yeah. He couldn't even, when he ate, his food was visible for a little while, Things gave him away. He was frustrated because he's in the wrong climate. He's in the middle of winter. There's snow. The snow would show his outline. His footprints were visible.
The fog, the rain. There's a part where he said that he would like maybe to be in Spain where it was hot.
Right.
And he could just run around in his birthday suit all day long.
So all of these grand visions of being able to have anything that he wanted and do anything that he wanted, he realized, none of this can I actually do.
You can't
this
be
is
a
no
complete,
good.
God. There are weaknesses to this. I think that that's part of his hubris. His hubris is, I can do anything, and then you see, no, you really can't. And you need to, and it brings you down to earth.
But the thing is like, legit, in all of the years that you were planning this, none of those things, you didn't think of any of that? You didn't think of any of the downsides? Really? How dumb do you have to be?
He's blinded.
And in that, it's also kind of one of those, that's not relatable, because most anybody, if you're going, I'm actually smart enough to come up with the idea, would immediately go, what are the drawbacks? What are going to be the negatives to this?
Right.
That's should be pretty normal, and especially to somebody who has been trained. He was in a university. This was a smart guy, we're told, and yet he was pretty dumb. Like,
he was. I think he was blind. He was blind, just as people were blind and couldn't see him. He couldn't see the forest for the trees. But okay, the other side of the coin is that we as the reader have trouble relating to him and feeling sorry for him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the makers of the 1933 film felt the same way, probably. At least that's what, because you see the Invisible Man go through his thing. You see a little bit of backstory where there's a girl involved, somebody he is supposed to be going with, but he's so wrapped up in his science and he wants to do all that, and she wants him. Her father, there's a thing where him and Kemp are contemporaries, and they talk and said, well, we were looking at this formula that Griffin was looking into. I call him Jack Griffin in this, but anyway, it has a chemical in it that removes color from things. It's called monocaine, and the side effect of it is it could causes madness. So basically, they were saying
the actual formula
they were giving. So instead of having a person who is just a man of sin from the beginning and now given these powers, and now look how they can just live without any accountability, it becomes his madness. It kind of explains why he's doing what he's doing.
Smart little boy who gets what he wants, and then it's not actually ending up what he wants, so he throws a temper tantrum.
Well,
like that's you just want to sum up the plot. There it is.
Yeah, but at the end, though, whenever in the movie, whenever Jack gets killed, it says that he is starting to become visible. Let's take him back to the hospital. Flora, the girl he likes, you have very few little sliver of time to see him. Come see him. See him. So you come see him, and he says, Flora, come here. I'm sorry. I've done terrible, but and so basically he has
a redemption
arc. Yeah.
And they make him more relatable by making him be somebody that some sweet girl actually could fall in love with.
Well, once upon a time he was a good guy.
Again,
before the madness.
The fact that we have to take and add so much to his story to actually make it believable and a good story and expand on those themes really does make me just go, why did this guy become so popular? Why does everybody, hear H.G. Wells is just everybody knows who he is.
He's a decent writer, and he has really, really good ideas and philosophy that he wants to get forward.
Was his philosophy even good?
Here's the thing.
I'm questioning at this point.
I can see the element. I can see what he was trying to say, but maybe how he went about it didn't have the effect maybe that he chose.
I just feel like there are
I think War of the Worlds had better, he was able to better, get forth his idea. The same with the next book, that we did. You were doing.
Yeah, which, stay tuned, Time Machine next week.
Well, stay tuned last week for the future of, no, I'm kidding. We did it last week, don't you remember? We will do it last week.
Time Machine will be fun. I feel like that one was, again, there's more to the stories of War of the Worlds and the Time Machine. Even though I have questions about how he views society. Even this one, the way that he portrays, I don't like how H.G. Wells he has these really smart people that do smart things, and then he's got kind of all the rest of humanity that he seems very dismissive of.
They blunder about.
And every one of his books that I've read so far has had that very common thing. There's been this idea of the elite intellectual, people that are doing things and that react,
and
well
to these
normal things. And then there's just
regular
the
people.
normal kind of stupid people that react ridiculously. And then, though, it's funny because even the smart people, a lot of times, I have seen,
blinders on, yeah.
Well, they have blinders on, but also they react just completely emotionally a lot of times. You saw that in War of the Worlds. You've got your main character who just has these moments of kind of emotional insanity that overtakes his emotions, and he just goes, I couldn't even remember what was happening then. It was, a blur of just, I'm reacting and not even thinking. And then, everything calmed down and I was able to think again. And I'm going, is this normal for people? I've never had that happen. I've had some pretty crazy things happen to me in my life, situations where things were out of my control, and yet these bouts of passion where I just, flailing about and running wild and I can't even remember what was happening. No. Why does he portray people like that? That's so weird.
I was going to say, you are not far off. If you remember, when I talked about H.G. Wells before we talked about War of the Worlds.
I'm right here.
Hi.
I'm not far off. Sorry.
No, in the last episode, whatever, we talked about War of the Worlds, talked about H.G. Wells and his kind of philosophies, and I mentioned that he was kind of pro-technocrat and pro-technocracy, or does that even work? A technocratic society would be, you know what? Let's leave it up to the smartest of the smart people, not politicians, but like scientists, who would come up with these things. I'm not saying that guys like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk are the smartest of us or whatever, but those would be the guys that he would say, oh, they need to make the decisions for everyone else, and the rest of us are just the regular people.
I don't like his
pedestrian
view of people.
It's not very equal.
For somebody
it's not very egalitarian.
A communist, right?
Socialist. More socialist.
For somebody that was a socialist, I feel like he really didn't feel like all people were equal. Though,
right.
From what I know of socialists, that seems to be a theme. The idea of a small group of people at the top ruling all the rest of the dummies at the bottom, saying, oh, you should be happy if you all have the same. Anyway.
Well, it reminds me of another story which I wish we would do at some point. It's called Animal Farm. And in Animal Farm, there's a line that says, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And what that says is that, yeah, okay, we're all equal, except some of us are smarter and more well-suited to rule the rest. And, and we don't, and it's almost like the rules don't apply to them, but we're okay with that. But that's kind of what ends up happening when you do that, is with this technocratic society, that's what you do. But H.G. Wells he studied the Royal Conservatory, amongst all these scientific people, so he was rubbing shoulders and elbows, whatever, with these scientific people, and he was probably very impressed by them and their intellect, and he thought, well, that's all we need is just someone really smart.
He didn't rub shoulders enough with the common people that he made fun of in his books, because they didn't deserve to be portrayed the way that he portrayed them.
Yeah.
I have a lot of beef with the way that he wrote just, his philosophy of how he looked at people. The way that it comes through in his books is really disturbing. And that's not something that I've ever, anybody that's discussed H.G. Wells, that's not a point that I've ever heard brought up.
No, it's not. And I think that's good that we do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's be even-handed with how we treat authors.
So this is an interesting story that, obviously it's kind of a baseline story that people have taken and had to add on to, like we mentioned last week. It just wasn't, he didn't give us enough at the get-go.
Yeah.
But he gave us, a base to build on. Sure, okay, I can appreciate him for that. but I don't like his philosophy of people. And I feel like, I would much rather we have taken and built on a lot of other authors out there than him. I don't think that he deserves the spot in history that he's gotten.
Well,
or if we give him that spot, let's also point out the flaws.
That's more the way I would look at it. I don't like to throw out someone's works just because they're some of their philosophies in what they do I don't fully agree with. I think that
it's kind of like
it's very foundational in his works.
Yeah, there's a lot of authors that I've enjoyed their writing and what the contributions they've made, while also going, well, this element is problematic.
Yeah.
And needs to be discussed. I've done that with Twilight, Hunger Games, especially a lot of the young, the fiction that's kind of put and angled towards young girls.
Right.
To me, that is one of those that I'm going, this is popular, and it's popular among these, in this very influential age group. And so when there's some issues here, they need to be talked about it. And, it's like we don't have to throw out the entire story and what you like about it, but what is wrong with it needs to be discussed. So
yeah, and how much of what we're reading is nostalgia for the original work, but also the lore that got created around the original work.
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like with these, you really enjoy all of the movies that got made. And because when we've been talking about the War of the Worlds and about Invisible Man, you're going, oh yeah, but in the movie they did this, and this is how they fixed this and stuff. Okay, that's great. I what came out of it.
I appreciated War of the Worlds, I think, regardless of whatever I saw in the adaptations. But I think Invisible Man is probably a little bit different for me.
I liked War of the Worlds more than I liked Invisible Man.
Same.
Invisible Man, I've kind of left off reading it going, oh, that's just, even the baseline story is just disappointing here because it didn't give enough and they didn't make him relatable. He's not even a good villain to me. I don't really want to read a story that's based around a smart little boy throwing a temper tantrum.
Well, see, that's the thing.
Then ends up getting killed in the end. It's like, and you're actually going, yeah, he needed to be killed. Unfortunately, he needed to be stopped.
Well, I don't know if you would completely hate the movies either because they're actually kind of fun. I watch them sometime. But you actually, as a point, if you want to know how things could go, his grandson gets the formula and helps stop the Germans. He parachutes into Germany, and as an Invisible Man, he's taking off his clothes while he's parachuting, and he lands and it's a pretty good little flick. But the thing is, though, I think
the idea that he has a grandson though is kind of ludicrous from the book.
Yeah, well,
it's like you have to really change a lot about who he is.
I don't know if it's his grandson or his brother's grandson. Whatever the point, they're trying.
Okay.
The main thing that's connective tissue on this is the formula, and honestly, that's what I think captivated people's mind was the idea that a formula could make you invisible. And I think when people could make you visualize that, and that was groundbreaking technology to be able to do that.
And you're going, what would I do with it?
Or what stories could we tell where we could show that special effect?
Well, it kind of reminds me a little bit of, there was a movie about where somebody was able or found out how to transport. It was a magician, and he used it in his shows.
The Prestige.
Yeah.
That had Hugh Jackman.
And it was like he wasn't actually transporting, he was creating clones. And then killing the original. And like there were these huge, kind of there's this whole morality
that was
issue.
hubris of revenge.
Yeah,
putting
around
revenge over everything, and he was left with nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that's another kind of
A father didn't have his
cautionary
daughter to live
tale.
with. He had to let his twin brother take her. Yeah.
Yeah, but of actually saying, well, there's this ability to do something, but the consequences of doing it are so huge. To me, that one though was told better.
Yeah.
There was just so much, emotionally that is going on with it. Was a roller coaster. And, you get a bit of the roller coaster with this one, with the way that it's told. I liked the pacing on it and, kind of the moments, the reveals of what happened. And, you've got this scene at the very end, of Kemp.
Yeah.
Of Kemp running, down this hill. He's being chased by the Invisible Man, and just this panic of going, that he's had stated that he was going to kill Kemp.
Yeah.
Because Kemp betrayed him. So it's like, just that entire scene was really incredibly well written, So there are some moments in there where it's like, you're feeling this emotion and this intensity, and in that it's like, okay, I'll give you credit for that. Was a well done, captivating scene that was written, that just, it sucks you in. It makes you, you're on the edge of your seat, like, what's going to happen? How is it going to happen?
Do you remember it wasn't the last time, it was a couple of episodes ago, we talked about like modern retellings that expose kind of some of those, how would they affect our society now. I told you about the one they did back in 2020 where it was talking about a stalker. He was an ex-husband, and he was stalking his ex-wife and gaslighting her and doing whatever he could to mess with her. He had this really expensive suit, and people were saying, you have $1 billion suit that can fold light, and you're using it to mess with your ex-wife and get her, and I'm like, isn't that just what we would do? I mean, if you all you do is watch the news, and you'd see that people have the opportunity to make the right choices, and so often they make the wrong ones, and then they destroy their own life. And for me, I think that's what I see here in this is, there's an old, I think we may mention this, but there's an old, I think it's not like a riddle, but it's like a test. You would say, which power would you like, the power of flight or the power of invisibility? And if someone says invisibility, you're like, oh, okay, this guy's maybe like a little bit of a creeper, or a little bit of a, or if they're flight, they're like, oh, I soar above it all.
I just had a realization. Do you know one that's actually, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm bunny trailing here.
Yeah.
The Phantom of the Opera. You think about somebody that, had an unfortunate, he looks different, and he scares people wherever he goes, and what he chooses to do that, and like his villain arc. Like, but even then, like, I feel so much more sympathy for the Phantom than I do for Griffin.
I don't think H.G. Wells wants us to feel sympathy for him at all, because he is pointing out this is the evil of man's carnality, but he doesn't give God as a possible solution.
I'm trying to look for relatability in this, because I know that that's one of the things that you need is relatability
in a cautionary tale.
So I'm trying to dig into this and actually see what he's gone through.
Yeah.
To go, how did he get to this point? Can I have some sympathy for him? Can I bring something out of that?
To eat off on that. I think that, to the meat with that character in that, to have relatability is not there. So much so they had to invent it, if they, do any application of it in film.
But
that just shows you right there that it's missing something.
To me, the most relatable thing to that we see in just everyday stuff is, when you look at like school shooters and stuff like that, is these kids who are, they're kids, but they're outcast. And they, a lot of times they've been bullied and like, they're being pushed a lot of times into this mentality of my life doesn't matter and the only thing that matters is my revenge, right?
Or to be remembered after you died, or
Yeah.
because while you were alive, nobody cared about you at all and wanted to mention your name. But the thing is, though, why would I want people's mention of my name to be in the same breath of what a horrible thing you did?
Yeah.
I would want people to say what a good man he was.
But
or he tried.
I think that a lot of times it comes at a breaking point where they're going, well, if I can't have this, if I can't do that, because I've tried to do something that actually got me honor, then I might as well just embrace the bad. If that's the way I'm going to be looked at anyway, then I'll just go all the way, And a lot of times it is just, it's tragic, And I feel like if there's any relatability for today, to this tale of going, this is where somebody can go when they feel outside of society and they feel like there's, nothing left for them here. Then to take and decide, well, I'm going to go completely invisible, and when that doesn't turn out the way they want to just, go on a rampage and throw a temper tantrum and, that like...
Become a tiny tyrant.
Yeah.
And just, flailing your fists at society. That's what he ends up doing.
If there's anybody that can have the relatability, but to me I go, I don't want kids to go, oh, this is relatable and read this story.
Yeah.
I want kids to find another story that it's like, find somebody that models how to take those feelings and turn them towards good and not evil. Find the redemption and the hope in your situation. Know that you're not stuck here. There is hope. And again, I want the moment of, but for the grace of God.
Yeah.
I want there to be God in these stories and God's redemption. Because we as a society, I don't think we need villain stories as a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Or at least not written with the, this attitude. I feel
right.
like I left this book, I finished it, and I went, there's so much more that, that could be done with this type of story. And a lot of it is just delving into the whys and the hows and then giving us a pathway to not go there.
But those things that you were looking for, they were invisible.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a pretty good place, I think, for us to kind of bring that little idea to a close.
So all in all, would you recommend this book? Because I think I'm saying...
You're saying maybe no?
Maybe no,
I would recommend it with a caveat. I'd recommend it, with just saying it's mostly, a lot of these books, it's mostly for their foundational application and not necessarily for this is the peak. This is the tip top. Because there's some books that people will point to and say this is the best of the best. And the best of the best is that those books might be overrated. And there's other underrated books that they haven't looked at yet. Mm. And hopefully that's, what we can bring up. But the thing that's most important about some of these books to me right now in this moment is that we're having discussions about them and we're having fun talking about it. And we're not going to, raise the roof about every book that we're going into. But I think that there are good lessons and good things to glean from anything that we might choose. And it's all good if you can take something good out of it, even if it wasn't in the first place. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
we'll agree on that. All right. Well, next week
we'll go back to the future. We'll go forward to the future.
Let's investigate a time machine and
the year 800,000 AD.
What H.G. Wells thought the future might look like, which is
you can guess.
Quite interesting.
You can, if you know what we talked about in about his philosophies, you can probably guess. But come back next week and we'll talk about it further in depth.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.